Hi there, everyone. Welcome to the latest video here from Patronum. This time we're going to do it as a bit of a fireside chat, just talking with Paul here, who's the founder of Bespin Labs, the makers of Patronum. As you can see, I'm sitting on a canal boat here. I'm in Ellesmere Port. Where are you, Paul?
I'm back in Manchester at the moment,
Oh,
just working from home. So not as
what a
exciting as
shame.
you, but yeah, maybe in the future I'll be in some kind of um, automobile, able
Yeah,
to do these
I
kind of
know
things as
you've
well. So
got yourself a motorhome, which is brilliant.
yeah, yeah.
Right. So we thought with this session we'd have a bit of a chat about some of the recent changes and other things that we've got to look forward to. There's been a few minor tweaks, sort of user experience kind of things. So we noticed that the UI has had a slight change, a little bit more grey background and things like that. So what's that all about then, Paul?
So yeah, I think probably about a month or so ago we decided to update and give the UI a bit of a refresh. Um, Instead of me just talking, why don't I just share my screen? So just bear
Yeah.
with me a second. Let me bring up the Patronum interface, and we could perhaps talk a little bit about the kind of things that we've done, where we're going, and just a peek into kind of the future. So as you can see, we've gone away from the majority of the interface being solid white. We've had a look at some of the newer applications that Google are releasing, and we've kind of matched that direction. There's a lot of reorganization or re-engineering, redesigning when it comes to how Google is presenting some of the applications that support Gemini. And so we wanted to make sure, as always, that our application looks very googly. It feels like one of the Google applications. There are a lot of other products in the marketplace that do user management.
Mhm.
And unfortunately, I personally feel that they have just stuck with a very kind of old-fashioned interface. There are some that I look at and I think that they were designed and developed back in the 1970s.
Yeah.
So we try to look at things, and we want what we want to do is give them that googly feeling. The application itself is developed using Google Material Design. And that's how we can adhere to those kind of Google looking standards. But having said that, we are moving slightly away from the Google Material Design interface.
Why is
Um,
that?
it's just from a performance perspective. We
Mhm.
found that I don't think Google are really keeping up to date with um, the latest web standards when it comes to what they've put into the material design framework.
Okay.
Um, and so we felt that by using the framework, it's kind of hampered us when it comes to the performance of the UI. We've
Mm.
done a loads of things with Patronum from a performance perspective over the past year. We've moved it from just a pure App Engine application to a hybrid of App Engine and Kubernetes. The majority of the pages, as it were. So if I click on one of the options like the policies, that will launch a Kubernetes instance, and that will then serve the pages as opposed to it all being just one dedicated App Engine instance that scales up and down. So we've done that from a performance perspective. Just on the back end. We've still got a lot of work to do. So from a performance point of view, from a front end perspective, we're moving the framework to a next generation web infrastructure. I believe it's Next.js is the framework which a lot of the modern applications are using, and so we're currently, and we have been for a number of months, porting every single page, every line of code to that new infrastructure.
Wow.
We're currently going through the security side of things, because obviously security is extremely important to us. We have multiple ways in which we check the security of the application. We have automation scripts running, we have humans doing penetration testing, etc. And we also have an application that clicks every single button, pushes information to the application to make sure that we're not susceptible to new issues that have been identified by the security community. So we're currently going through that process. So hopefully once we've gone through that entire process, maybe this month, we are in July, or more likely the beginning of August, you will see a brand new UI when it comes to Patronum.
And that'll
We have been
improve.
adding a number of key features.
Yeah, I was going to say that'll improve performance on where we've got sort of infinite scrolling type pages, where you've got maybe a long list of users or a long list of files or something like that. Sometimes they can buffer a little bit, can't they? So it's that kind of thing that's going to be improved.
Absolutely, yeah. Yeah, so just the responsiveness of the loading of screens, switching from one page to another will be a lot quicker. And in fact, the tests that I've been doing with the team, they are just super quick. You click from one page to another, and bang, you're in there and you're working. And so I feel that this new release, when it gets launched later in the year, will be a massive improvement just from a performance perspective.
Fantastic. Look forward to that then. Other sort of new things that caught my eye, in the dashboard view, there's a new sort of report or a new section in there that shows us recently added users, recently offboarded users. In fact, there it is, right on screen.
Yeah, absolutely. So we've got that on screen here. So one of the things that we wanted to do, and one of the things that we've been doing, is we've been talking to a lot of enterprise customers, and we wanted to give some visibility over exactly what the policies are doing. Now, obviously, we've got the logs, and the logs are available through the bell icon up here. You click on the bell, you can see what's happening, and then if you can see more activities, that will show you exactly what's going on from a logging perspective. You can query the log. A lot of our enterprise customers are exporting those logs to things like Google BigQuery, and then they're using BigQuery to amalgamate logs from multiple sources to then create their own dashboards. One of the things that we wanted to do was to show customers exactly who's joining the organization from a policy perspective, so which users are being affected by onboarding based policies, and then which users are being affected by offboarding policies. And this is the first iteration of that kind of feature, that redesign to provide this level of information. And we're not stopping here. We've got a lot of other feature requests from some of our customers around this particular area. One of the things that Patronum is really powerful for is the ability to stack policies. So you could have a particular offboarding policy that can trigger on a particular activity, such as an account being suspended. At that point, we can then see the suspension and set the end date of the user. So that's one particular task. You could then have another policy that then runs based on that particular end date. And you might have multiple policies that then get triggered days into the future that do different tasks to offboard the particular user. Now, those are maybe 5, maybe 6 different policies. So one of the things that we wanted to do was we wanted to show customers not only which users are being affected by offboarding processes, but we also wanted to show when a user actually leaves all of those processes and fully becomes offboarding or offboarded. So one of the things that we are currently working on is another kind of panel where you'll see users that have now been offboarded, whether that's suspended, deleted, or archived. And so we'll be able to show you that, and then we'll be able to show you which particular policies the user has gone through, etc. But in this screen, as it stands at the moment, we can show you which users have recently been added to the organization and are being affected by onboarding policies. So we've got John here and other users that are being affected. We can look into those particular users, and we see the kinds of things that have been applied to those users. And we can scroll through. This is a very simple policy that's being run for this particular user. Offboarding wise, we could also see what's happened to Beth here. So we can see that on the 2nd of July, a particular user was run. Beth was run. The policy would have transferred the user's data from one user to another. And so as we can see here, this particular process is running and we're transferring the data from the user to maybe the manager, etc. And so that kind of gives you an overview of the onboarding and offboarding status within the organization. Now we can also scroll further down into the activity section and we can see things in a little bit more detail. Specifically failures. So this is where I would go if I'm noticing that particular users haven't had things actioned against them. So I can see here that we've got a cloud identity account, presumably, by just judging by the name. The policy that was applied was a test email signature policy. I think that's probably one of your policies, Stuart. We can then see that this particular process has failed. So I can look into that. Click on the I can see that for whatever reason this particular account has failed, and the reason for that was that the email is not enabled for that account, which makes sense because judging by the name, I presume that this account is a cloud identity account, therefore it doesn't have email, so we can't set an email alias, we can't set an email signature, so we can just delete that particular.
That's all good information when you're trying to
troubleshoot. It won't happen again.
Yeah.
Absolutely, it's extremely valuable, and we can also kind of filter on different kinds of actions in the process. We can look back at the other users that we've seen to see which users have successfully been run. And again, if I clicked on the eye icon, it would show me exactly what's happened from a particular user's perspective. The same is true from an offboarding point of view. Now, the users have been offboarded, so they are now not running or not being processed. So I can have a look at the history of the offboarding policies, and I can see here that Beth ran with a particular policy, which is an offboarding policy. It completed and it was successful. Again, we can have a look at that, but it would show us exactly the same information that we've seen previously. Again, it just gives me that that reassurance that from an onboarding perspective and an offboarding point of view, that the policies are running, they're successful, and it's a very easy way to identify which users have been successful, but more importantly, which users haven't. And again, this was really working with some of our enterprise customers who have tens or hundreds of thousands of users running through the Patronum environment. And one of the things that they want to see is the errors that happen or the failures that happen because of just the normal things that happen in an organization. Maybe the user doesn't have a manager and the policy's been configured to just error if there is a particular issue with those particular policies.
Okay. The other thing that I've seen that's new regarding policies is the ability to use lookups, where normally you might say, I'm going to do a data transfer to the executor as a role that we define, and you're defining that in the policy. That's a bit static, isn't it? So can you explain the idea of using lookups instead?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is a new feature that we've added, particularly for very large organizations that have very complex offboarding requirements. We had a look at the majority of our kind of enterprise customers, and their offboarding processes, while complicated, all followed a very similar pattern. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to allow for the organization to have one or two policies while being able to adhere to very complex processes. Now, let me give you an example. We recently onboarded a new customer. They came from another offboarding solution. The previous solution had around about 90 offboarding workflows. Each workflow was designed for each individual kind of company group inside the organization, and they had to then duplicate all of the processes for all of the 90 different organizations that they had within the company. If anything changed, the IT had to go into each individual offboarding workflow and change it and update it 90 times, and it was becoming a very tedious problem for them, which is one of the reasons why they moved over to us. So one of the things that we added was the ability to use our kind of policy logic to say, if, as we've got here, if the department contains SC, let's treat this slightly different to other organizations or other users in the system. So what we can do is we can say, what we'd like to do is we'd like to move the user to a particular organizational unit. So let's say our process is, if we are in marketing, as part of the offboarding process, we get moved to the marketing department. Or maybe from an onboarding process, we get moved to the marketing organizational unit based on that one attribute. That means that we can have one policy that then allows us to distribute everybody in the organization into the correct organizational units, because we've just got the logic in the lookup table. We can then simplify the policies. So if I just jump into the policies, we can kind of have a look to see what that would potentially look like. And there are a few other things that we can have a look at while we're looking into the policies, because we've added a few other things within the policy section. So let me just expand this area here. Let's just say goodbye to our friendly chat. In fact, let me have a look at some of your policies that you've been creating in our environment here. Let's go for the onboarding policy. Bit of a risk here because I've not really had a chance to see what you
we should explain
do,
this is our demo environment, so it's full of absolute nonsense. So,
yeah, absolutely. So here is an onboarding policy, and it's based on a particular organizational units that we're going to trigger against. And so some of the things that we can do is we could go into the settings section. And then within the settings section, we can go to the security section. And then in the security section, we've got the move option that we saw in the lookup. So I can say move, and then instead of actually hard coding within the policy where I'm going to move the user, I can just say we're going to move the user to the lookup location. So now what we're able to do is, based on that lookup table, we can automatically now move the user to the correct organizational unit, and we only have to have one policy to do that. So we could have multiple departments being moved into the correct organizational unit using the lookup table, as opposed to having multiple policies. The complexity then gets into the lookup tables, but it should be a lot easier just to manage a very simple page of attributes and locations, as opposed to having lots of more complicated policies to replicate and update. And we will be expanding this particular feature as more and more customers start to use it. One of the other areas that I wanted to highlight, which is fairly new, is within the action section. We have this failure behavior. So by default, previously, Patronum would fail and then move on with the rest of the actions of the policy, which is fine if you're doing things like adding an email signature. If the email signature fails for whatever reason, you don't want the policy to just stop, because it might actually work the next time around. But in some scenarios, you might actually want the policy to just stop. I'm thinking mainly for things like offboarding.
Yeah,
So
when you're
if
doing data
you
transfer, that kind of
well,
thing.
yeah, absolutely. So if
Yeah.
you're doing a data transfer, you don't want the data transfer to fail and then the policy just continues, because one of the
Yeah.
actions may well be a delete. And
Yeah.
so you don't want the policy to continue to that delete process. You want it to actually stop. You can go back to the dashboard. You can see what the failure was. You can then resolve the failure, and then you can step the policy forward again, and it will then pick up that particular user. Another option that we've got is the ability to run after a particular policy. And so we can basically say, well, this particular policy will not run unless the two-step verification has been completed.
Right.
And again, that could be used from an offboarding perspective. Again, as I described earlier in our chat, some customers have multiple offboarding steps using multiple offboarding policies. You don't want the offboarding policy that does the data transfer to fail and stop, but then have another policy a couple of days later pick up and continue to do,
Carry on
again.
regardless. Yeah, got that. Yeah,
Absolutely. So one of the things that you could do is you could say this particular policy will not run until a subsequent policy has run. And so now what we're offering is the ability to now layer policies on top of each other. So a policy will not run unless a previous policy has successfully completed for that particular user. So these two options are really, really useful. We're probably going to be, or we are going to be expanding this section, and we're going to be making it a lot more useful from a multi-policy kind of solution, where there are scenarios where you may want to defer or deflect different policies based on different kinds of conditions, where you have one policy that gets triggered on a particular organizational unit and you have another policy that gets triggered on another organizational unit. So the workflow would be, I come into policy one and then have an option to
like
go
branching off to do
policy.
different things.
Absolutely. So you could branch off to different policies. And so we're going to build this environment so that it will support that multiple branching approach when it comes to how you can manage a branching within a policy.
Fantastic. Yeah, that sounds like it's going to be really, really powerful then, and allow you to have far fewer policies by the sound of it, because you have a slightly more complex policy that'll do multiple things based on the triggering criteria, based on what's happened beforehand, and all of that. And then with the lookup table as well, it will satisfy, instead of having to have a policy for marketing, a policy for finance, a policy for sales, and all the rest of it, you can do it all in one policy.
Absolutely. And so that was the idea. Again, we had a look at some of the customers that were moving over, and they're coming over from all different kinds of alternative applications, and the complexity that they've had to build in those environments. When we had a look at those environments, we just said there's a better way of doing this. And so we spent some time working through, just from a logic perspective, how those particular organizations were onboarding people, offboarding people. And we came up with the idea of, first of all, a lookup table to kind of map particular sections based on specific criteria. Again, that's super powerful because, like you said, it allows you to then limit the number of policies that you're having to create and manage and update, which was the main thing. I mean, creating the policies is pretty straightforward, or creating a workflow is straightforward. It's when you have to go back and revisit 80, 90 different workflows, which the customer was doing in the when they had the previous solution. By having a lookup table and putting that kind of effort up front, that pretty much stays static. And then it means that you can be a lot more dynamic and agile when it comes to policy configuration.
Great stuff. Okay, one other thing that's new, I'm sure, is archive. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that, what that feature's all about?
Yeah, Absolutely. So the archiving element. So there are a number of areas in which the archiving feature can be or is utilized. I'll touch on how to configure the archiving in a minute. But while I'm in the policy section, it makes sense for me just to show you where you would configure this from a policy point of view.
Right.
Again, this is more from an offboarding perspective. One of the things that we wanted to offer, we have the backup solution where we have a separate product, Patronum Backup. It backs up all your emails, your calendars, your contacts, your drives, your shared drives. Everything inside Google Workspace gets pretty much backed up to an extent inside a cloud infrastructure that is managed and maintained. One of the requests that we got was when some organizations are offboarding users, they want to extract the email and only the email. And one of the things that they want to do is they want to store that email locally within their own organization, within their own cloud storage. And so we've given organizations two options here. So the first option is to export emails from Google Vault and store those onto a shared drive. So this, or the idea behind this, is that if your requirement is to have a legally binding trail of evidence from an email communication perspective, you can't just extract the email. It has to be done via Google Vault, and it has to be stored in the format that Google Vault presents to you, and you have to keep it in that format. There are tags and keys and all those kind of things stored within those emails that make sure that it is what was originally delivered inside the organization. And so we give you a legally secure and a legally valid way of extracting emails from Google Vault and storing them within your own Google Drive infrastructure. And that's suitable for a number of clients who want a legally trackable, traceable email thread. Some organizations aren't particularly bothered about that. What they are more concerned about is just the emails themselves, just the data. They want to be able to extract the emails and then potentially restore them, restore a particular email item. Not overly concerned about legal e-discovery.
Chain of custody kind of thing. Yeah.
Absolutely, those are the words I was looking for. So what they want to do is they want to extract the email when somebody leaves and store it within their own cloud bucket. That reduces the costs of Google archive licenses, and it gives them the control of the data. So what we've done is we've provided them the ability to extract the email, and you can configure buckets inside your organization. You could have your own bucket, which you can use from a lookup perspective. Again, referring back to the lookup, because maybe you have marketing team, they get extracted to the marketing bucket, etc. Or you could have different buckets for your particular organization. And if you wanted to, you could have a path. So you specify the bucket, and then you just tick, yes, I'd like to archive the email to that particular bucket when the user leaves the organization via this particular policy. That then gives you the option to then view the user's emails once they've been archived. So you could have a policy, the policy will run, it will archive the email. It will archive the email via, first of all, it will look at Google Vault. If there is a Google Vault, it will extract all the emails from the Google Vault. If there isn't a Google Vault, we will use the Gmail API, and we will extract the email via Gmail, and we'll store that data into the bucket. And then you can just restore the entire account, or you could have a look at the individual user and do partial restores. And so you could go through, find the particular items in the inbox and restore those to whoever you wanted to directly via the bucket. The data that we're extracting from Google, we're doing it in just a basic text format. We're not doing anything proprietary. We're using the mbox format, which is just text files, and we're storing those text files inside your own environment on a Google Cloud storage bucket. So there is no proprietary databases or anything here that we're using. You could bring other archiving solutions to Patronum and we can utilize them. So if you've got another archiving solution that runs on Google, there are one or two other competitors that do something similar. We can take their data, again, because it's not proprietary, and we can import that into the Patronum environment. And so we've got a lot of customers who are moving away from other archiving solutions and moving them over to Patronum because this particular feature is included in the base product of Patronum. It's not an additional cost. You just pay for the archive licenses, and it's the $2 per user per year archiving. So we're not selling a Patronum archive solution. It's just part of the baseline Patronum. You just pay the $2 for every user that you have archived, and that's done after the 12 months. So the first year, you're pretty much archiving all your data for free.
Yeah. Okay, that's fantastic. Okay.
So I did mention the ways of setting this up. Sorry, Stuart. I didn't mention this. So in order to connect the buckets, you would go to the integration section, and then you just configure the buckets here. You would import the JSON file that is available from creating a storage bucket in Google Cloud. And you can then import that into Patronum, and it can then be stored or made available to the application. There are different elements that can be configured. You can configure a retention period where you want to. Maybe you want to store the data for a period of time, then automatically delete it if you have data retention requirements. Again, we can automatically purge the data from those buckets depending on what your particular requirements are.
Fantastic. Okay, what else have we got that's new, or anything that people can look forward to in the future that it's not there yet, but you're working on it?
Yeah, so I think I've teased a few of the things. So the main thing for us is the UI, the new UI that is going to be launched. There are a few tiny little things that we're looking at from an offboarding perspective that I might want to share with you. Things like automatically creating a shared drive when somebody is offboarded. So one of the requests that we get is we like the idea of migrating the data or moving the data to a shared drive, but we want to have individual shared drives for each user that we offboard. So that will be an option. So you will be automatic. So we will automatically create a shared drive, and then we will then move the data to that shared drive via the account that is created, and then we will assign the manager as the owner of that shared drive and do all of those kind of things as well. Another option that we're adding to policies from an offboarding perspective is we will be looking at the amount of storage a user has taken up, and if they are 0 or less than a particular value, you can then decide to do something else with the account. We have a lot of organizations, especially large enterprise customers, who create an account, person never joins the organization, they want to delete the account, but what they're doing is they're putting the whole account through an offboarding process, transferring the data, archiving the files, etc., etc., and that generates a lot of load for us, and it also just adds a lot of clutter to
Yeah, and
their
there's nothing there really.
organization,
So
because they've got folders and subfolders which are empty, and yeah, as you said, there's absolutely nothing there.
yeah,
And so what we're going to add is the ability to say, if the user has never logged in, and if the user has no storage, then let's just do something very, very quickly, such as suspend and delete the account. We don't need to go through a long-winded offboarding process. So there's those kind of, they're small, but they make a big impact to both us and to our customers. So there's a couple of things that we're doing that are coming down the line pretty quickly. My main focus at the moment is the new UI elements.
yeah,
One from a speed performance perspective, and also from a security point of view.
yeah. Wow. Well, that was a hell of a lot to cover. That was brilliant. Um, important to say that if people do have feature requests, we're always open to hear from them. A lot of what goes into Patronum is driven by what customers are actually needing and wanting. So don't hold back. Reach out to us. And if there's anything you want to hear in these videos as well, let us know, because these are for you. So thanks for that, Paul. That's been absolutely brilliant. Who knows where we'll be when we do the next one? Maybe you will be off in your van somewhere.
Yep. Hopefully, yeah. And we'll both be, super mobile when it comes to the next video.
Exactly. Yeah. Living the working from anywhere dream, huh?
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah. Well, again, Stuart, thank you for hosting this. Yeah. And like Stuart said, one of the main things that the reason why the product is evolving at this particular pace is just by talking to our customers. Both myself and Stuart, we're speaking to customers on a weekly basis, speaking to new customers, speaking to existing customers. We have regular meetings with some of our strategic customers. And we're always talking to the support team on the kind of things that are being requested. Those things get boiled down. We have a long list of wishes that customers want. We boil them down. We talk about it on a regular basis, and then we add them to the product. The product really hasn't moved on based on internal thoughts and ideas. It's all coming from the community. It's all coming from customers. So please just keep it coming. And again, thank you very much for your time. And thank you, Stuart.
Great. See you next time.
Bye now.